Okay, folk, I'm trying once more without screen sharing, unfortunately, but later on my Circle of All Nations page, I shall post the PowerPoint presentation for those of you who are interested in following up. Um, we basically were saying that we're doing a prayer to celebrate the work of Grandfather Commanda, and we were hoping to show such things as his knowledge and wisdom and bridge building over the years. Excuse me. Hello? Hello? I can't talk right now. Sorry. Call later, okay? Bye. Um, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to wing it from now, people, because I can't even share my PowerPoint presentation with you. So over the last few months, we've had an amazing tech student, April, who's been helping us figure out how to do the live presentations on Facebook, how to feed in videos, how to introduce and chat with people. But unfortunately, the technology is not working today. It's a very challenging moment for many of us, particularly in relation to grandfather's work, and uh, and so really we're starting off once more with a big prayer for the family, the community, the Circle of All Nations folk who have animated his work for uh, decades and decades, and more particularly in terms of the newer work over the last 2 decades. So today we were going to actually be commemorating multiple things. Uh, the 25th anniversary of the Sunbow 5 Walk, the 20 years since the big gatherings at Bitterby Lake, 9 years since the passing of Grandfather Commanda. Today is also the 3rd of August, and it's the birth date of his friend Jules Siwi, who was the architect of the North American Indian Nations government. And today we'll focus a little bit on the story of Jules Siwi. August 6th actually marks 9 years since the passing of Donald Marshall Jr., a very close Circle of All Nations friend, and uh, and also, gosh, this is 50 years since I arrived in Canada on the 6th of August. But wanting to talk a little bit about the moment in time Circle of All Nations gatherings, aligned, of course, with the coming of the Perseid meteor showers, which William's ancestors visited in Lac des Étoiles in Quebec, in the territory of the Petit Nation. And so these are the many things that have been on my mind in wanting to share the moment with William's Circle of All Nations friends. Uh, Unfortunately, I see some of our friends are appearing on the Facebook live show. there are technical problems that are preventing me from doing this as I actually had originally intended. But what I shall do is videotape the entire thing later and post it on our Circle of All Nations video page so that folk may be able to catch um, the gist of what we're wanting to share and celebrate now in these times of huge global crisis, huge prayer, huge transformation in the lives of many people, and where more than ever we're wanting and needing the prayer of people like Grandfather Commanda. So right off the bat, I would like to acknowledge the many, many elders and I wouldn't like to call them volunteers, the people who were so passionately concerned about Grandfather Commander's work and vision that they, in fact, animated his work. And the work wouldn't be anything without all of them. But from the earliest of days, Peter de Conti did the fires, elders Dominic Rankin, the St. Onge twins, their brother Lucien, the entire St. Onge family were part of the gatherings. Abuela Margarita was an absolutely incredible, strong voice for the gathering. She was the one elder who went to sunrise ceremonies, sat through all the talking circles, did sweat lodge ceremonies, did her own workshops, participated in the drumming and dancing circles, inspired us really very, very greatly, and brought forward that whole notion of the cosmic. We had many other elders who supported us over the years, and I, at the risk of missing a few names, I'm just going to kind of omit mentioning them all at this point because, as you can tell, I'm a little bit worried that we haven't been able to proceed as we intended. Um, but I would like to say a great thank you to Gaston Lavoie, who generally came in way before the gathering to help prepare the place, prepare our uh, grounds. And then over the months before the gathering, it was grandfather's family, Tommy and Evelyn, who helped with so much of the preparation work before some of our arrival of our friends, and amongst the foremost of those, Three Rivers and Michael Nicholson, who came every year after they supported grandfather with the Sunbow 5 walk to help with the cooking and the setting up of the space for the guests. And they did a bang up job with this effort. Three Rivers, together with White Wolf and Madeline and other volunteers, kept the elders and the volunteers fed throughout the gathering, breakfast, lunch, and supper, coffee times, and things like that. A gigantic feast for everybody during the gatherings. We had an incredible team of security folk who kept us safe, despite the fact that we were hosting thousands and thousands of people who we really didn't know, who came from various parts of the world to join us. And marvelous testament to the folk who helped and supported. We had Fran managing our communications booth, sharing papers, introducing people to the protocols at the gatherings, translating from French to English, and keeping the rhythm of our communications on track right from the very beginning, making sure we had first aid kit stuff that the Kirigan Zibi Healthcare Center shared with us. It was really, really marvelous. We appreciated really very much the engagement of the Kirigan Zibi community and the support for the overall event, as well as the work undertaken within the actual town of Maniwaki to accommodate thousands of people. William Commander's gatherings put Maniwaki on the global map, and it was a very special moment in time. With respect to the chief agenda items for today, in part I'm trying to bridge between where I'm sitting right now in the academic world and William Commander's indigenous grassroots outreach and his outreach to governments and other organizations and institutions. As many of you know, it's been a challenge in the last few years to ensure proper understanding of the huge legacy of William Commanda. And, um, and in fact, I think what I could also do is go back to photo booth. And, um, and maybe then I would at least appear live while I'm talking to you about all of this instead of just being a voice video. So where is photo booth? No, it's not presenting. Okay, so there we're hoping to share the knowledge and wisdom through a bridge building process so that we can in fact leave a proper record of some of grandfather's work in the formal educational stream. We're celebrating the Circle of All Nations moment in time gatherings. We're also acknowledging that this work was seeded in history over the past century and earlier, but particularly since the 1945 and the establishment of the time of the United Nations, but also the presence of the indigenous civil rights activism. And finally, we're wanting to finish on the note of peace and Gina Daganuk. Folk, I've just gotten a message from my friend April, who's doing the technical problems. She's contacted Facebook, and it's apparently a problem with them, not so much us. I'm not sure whether you can hear me. Can you please advise? Can you hear me? At any rate, I shall carry on doing this, and I'll consider it a practice run at any rate if it's not being quite live streamed to you guys. But I'm just checking for the minute. Unfortunately, that's the way it is with technology. Wanted to share a few thoughts, a few core Circle of All Nation principles from our Learning from a Kindergarten Dropout book. One, a notion about the spiritual, not to be confused with the religious, because we're not interfering with the religious backgrounds and priorities of many people, but we're also talking about a spiritual dimension that is foundational to the integral way of life of people like Grandfather Commanda. We're talking about our Circle of All Nations medicine wheel, which serves as our conceptual tool to access the complexity of the thinking of Grandfather Commanda. We're noting that the concept of Jinawe Daganuk, we're all connected, is about relationship which operates at multiple complex levels. And we're talking also about the huge distinction between individuality, the individual being a unique part of a biodiverse eco-community, and individualism, where the rights of one supersede the rights of the community as free will. And we're wanting to ensure that this differentiation in terms of our picture of the strength of the individual is well understood. And then we note that the individual and the community are inextricably interconnected, and within this context, that conflict is negotiated with responsibility, respect, generosity, and compassion to access harmony, balance, and we call it being good enough for two. So I am really actually not sure if anybody can hear me. Can anybody respond, please? Because if not, we will just postpone this entire thing for another moment. Okay, so Lara confirms that you are able to hear me, so I'll continue. Um, yes, okay, you can hear me. Maybe I should just go back to trying to find the photo booth app. And I'm wondering, can you see me as well? Can you see me as well? And if you can, then that would be great. I shall continue. I wanted to share a prayer for contemplation. Grandfather sent this one to our June 21st gathering, and I'm including it in this PowerPoint presentation. And he talks here. Somebody wrote this, we don't know actually who did, but the voice talks to, O Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to the universe. Hear me. I am your child of light. I need to know your love. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and the purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made, and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may understand the things you are teaching me. Let me learn the lessons you are hiding underneath every leaf and rock. I seek strength, not to be greater than my brother, but to overcome my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so when life fades as the fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without shame. I'll go back now and check to see. Okay, so you can see me as well. That's very good. So we'll continue like this. It may end up being a one-man show, unfortunately, people. I'll explain a little bit of our plan for the day later. But let's go back to who is William Commanda, who demands so much of our time and attention, even to this day, all over the world. So many people are fascinated by him. So many people feel his strength and his healing and his energy with them. He was the carrier of the sacred wampum heritage of the Algonquins of the eastern seaboard. A powerful heritage. He carried the wampum bells for over the last 40 years of his life, and it is that heritage that served to animate his passion for creating the Circle of All Nations and the culture of peace, and creating a huge focus on environmental awareness and stewardship, huge respect for Mother Earth that he hoped to inspire the entire world with. And that is why we persist in sharing his thoughts and his messages as much as we possibly can. And as we know, it's challenging times throughout the globe for us at individual, communal, and nation levels. Something really huge is shifting and transforming. That is really telling us we need to follow the path of Mother Earth and the evolutionary cycle that she is now initiating. And grandfather tried to alert us to this for over 40 years, and with huge urgency during the last decade of his life. And many thanks to the people who continue to animate that prayer for Mother Earth. Grandfather Commanda was a renowned birchbark canoe maker and craftsman, and the craft was not just a pragmatic one; it was also a message about the journey of life, and the accessing of the art and creativity in that pathway. It's also become a part of our learning tools in terms of sharing the teachings of Grandfather Commanda, and the wonderful documentary called, in fact, Good Enough for Two by Valerie Poyenne shows just how many people engaged in the actual creation of the gathering, the documentary event, the actual creation of the canoe event. And that, of course, was the experience in the life of Grandfather Commanda from the time he was a child, from the time he was a toddler and learning to float tiny little birch bark canoes in the rainwater gutters, with the help of his mother. Canoes were a passion of his life. And his 75 canoes reached people in different parts of the world, and the enigmatic energy continues to inspire a whole new range of artists and canoe builders right now. And many of them have taken this work to schools and to universities. So the educational institutions too are beginning to understand the power of the iconic canoe, voted in 2006 or 7 as Canada's most iconic symbol. William Commanda was also an Algonquin leader, an elder, uh, um, a political leader, chief of his community for almost 20 years, chief by acclamation, because he held himself apart from the Indian Act system in his execution of his responsibilities as a political leader. He then became a Supreme Chief of the North American Indian Nations government, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. He was the founder of the Circle of All Nations global eco-peace community dedicated to advancing environmental stewardship and racial harmony. And all the folk who are interested in this work continue to animate his efforts. He received greater and greater attention from the larger world, really for many, many decades, and increasingly during the last 20 years of his life, and received awards and acknowledgments from more than a couple dozen organizations and groups. But here I profile in particular his appointment as Officer of the Order of Canada. That's Canada's penultimate honor of a person living in this country. And of course, especially significant that it went to Grandfather Commanda. He was nominated by someone for the Order of Canada, and they chose to appoint him as officer. And of course, the award is presented to those who desire a better country. And in fact, that inspired Grandfather's passionate work, his desire for a better country on the land of his ancestors. He was a recipient of 2 honorary doctorate degrees, and he was also acknowledged by St. Paul's University. So, in fact, the University of Ottawa, the University of Quebec Outaouais, and St. Paul's, 3 facilities in the National Capital Region, acknowledged him while he was alive. During the last 8-9 years, I myself have been at Carleton University, and I completed my doctorate degree on the remarkable environmental legacy of William Commanda. In fact, to ground his education and knowledge and wisdom in an educational facility, an educational institution, so that he wouldn't only always be remembered as a pretty face, which indeed he was, but also remembered for the strength of his thinking. It's been a hard challenge because it wasn't easy going back to school, but right now we're engaged in further studies to entrench a deeper understanding of the multifacets of his way of thinking in that academic institution. I'm very pleased that over the summer, despite COVID, we've had a whole bunch of new young people helping us with this work. It's been quite amazing, but not just young people, also some adult learners. We were hoping to Zoom in a few of our friends to this gathering today. One, a bunch of Carleton University summer students, 2 on co-op programs, one of them being April, who has been so busy helping create our new Circle of All Nations website, 2020 website, but also with the help of Karen Bisson, who, as you know, has been our loyal Circle of All Nations friend for 20 odd years, have created a landing page. So when we eventually release our new website, you will be able to go to the original Circle of All Nations site set up in 2000 after the 2000 gathering by Scott. The latest site that we operated on Facebook iWeb program from 2012. You'll be able to access all the blogs, all the old conversations, all the old photographs, because in reality we find that none of that material is outdated. People can start at beginning stages and learn to think like many of the Circle of All Nations friends learned. Also on the landing page of our new website, you'll find all our Facebook pages. And of course, you know, we do the Circle of All Nations page, we do the William Commanda page, we do the William Commanda Asanabka activist page, we do my own page, and we do my Nature Can Teach page. We are so grateful that we have thousands of friends amongst these various pages, and and we're grateful for all the wonderful information they share with us to keep us more up to date than any news broadcast on global critical current issues, to present many perspectives on these challenging issues, and also to maintain such a zone of respect and responsibility. We hear many fearful things about Facebook and the kinds of challenges people face out there with what they share. I can only say that we are totally, totally grateful that Facebook presents us with an opportunity most of the time to share so effectively, but also through our Facebook friends to share things that are relevant to grandfather's Circle of All Nations vision. And so yes, it is a part of our new platform. Of course, so we also continue to have our archival Asanabka site that was created and maintained and supported with the help of Karen Bisson, who has just been dedicated to helping us keep the thread of the communications of Circle of All Nations going, even though our Circle of All Nations website remained static for several years. But everything you want to know about the Circle's work over the last 8 years is available in our constant contact reports and our reports on the Asanabka site. But now we're moving on to another part of our work, and here it's the creation of a cybercartographic digital atlas, which is part of my postdoctoral studies. Now, at this point, I'd like to say a special note of thank you to my supervisor, Dr. D.R.F. Fraser Taylor, who, in fact, created the domain of cybercartography, a new form of mapping, a digital mapping process that includes text, stories, videos, photographs, in showing how people mark their presence on the land. He created actually the word cybercartography by defining it so well since the 90s, and then created a marvelous platform, the Nunali platform, where he has a team of workers at the Geomatics and Cartographic Research Center developing this amazing program for this cartographic digital atlas research, and it'll be part of our new platform. And in the center of it will be a new Circle of All Nations website. I see messages from some of my friends who may not realize that we are having technology problems, but if I don't get to interview you all today, and I doubt we will, then we shall try to do that at another moment. Let me continue. With respect then to the honorary degrees, it's interesting to note that former Governor General Mikhail Jean created the Commanda Hall at the University of Ottawa to acknowledge William Commanda's knowledge and wisdom. And likewise, at Carleton University, they created the Ojigwanang Room, named after William Commanda, Unfortunately, Carlton really doesn't know very much about the work and the thinking of William Commanda, but over the course of this summer, we've had so many students now engage with our work so that we see a change evolving, and we see that even if they aren't able to comment today on the Zoom sessions plan, that they will and be able to share what they've learned from William Commanda in their review of his archival websites and their animation of his ongoing work and his relevance to students of today. I noted earlier that he was also a spokesperson at the United Nations on peace, on environment, and on planting the indigenous language, Algonquin language, and indigenous languages on the global stage, such that 2019 was declared the decade for indigenous languages, no, the year for indigenous languages. He's also a presence in the Canadian History Hall and in the 40th issue of the Up the Gatineau publication. So he's part of the history as well of Canada. Okay, I realize now I can at least show you a few things, even if I can't show you all my friends. Okay, so who else was William Commanda? He is the Indigenous Elder, carried the Wampum Honorary PhD, Office of the Order of Canada, as I just said, and he said we must all come together with one heart, one mind, one love, and one determination to create a circle of all nations, a culture of peace. And there he holds the three-figure wampum belt, and it is actually the guiding wampum for his work and for all our efforts. The indigenous in the center, holding the hands of the newcomers. In the old days, the earliest settlers, the French and the English, drawing their hands together in friendship, as grandfather often said, because he knew, his ancestors knew about the wars that they struggled with in other parts of the world. A sacred agreement that his ancestors acknowledged in their wampum belt by the signature of the symbol of the Vatican. But I have to say, grandfather also wondered how effectively, how truly the Vatican represented the indigenous people sometimes. I noticed the other day that the Vatican is, the Catholic Church is the largest private landowner in the world. And I know many times as I drove grandfather throughout the continent, but especially through Quebec, he noted all the churches and cathedrals on what would have been high mountain vision quest places of his people, places where 2 or 3 rivers converge, where there were rapids or waterfalls, where there were high mountain peaks. Those were the energy power places of Mother Earth, and William's people, who in the old days acknowledged the spiritual dimension just as much as they acknowledged the emotional, the physical, and the mental, but really were driven by, guided by the spiritual. He realized that they were removed from many of these sacred places of theirs. But because his ancestors had welcomed the newcomers, he continued to always assert that welcome, and he hoped and prayed for the assertion of indigenous, together with all people, to occupy rightful place in the land of his ancestors and in the land we all occupy. As most of us know, most indigenous peoples are no longer able to practice the Mamiwinini heritage of William Commanda. That is the nomad heritage of William Commanda. That is, we walk, we travel every day, we move, we people on the move. They are instead confined in many instances to reserves, which have, far from becoming the sanctuary and place of heritage protection, have in fact become prisons for many people. I just recently wrote a paper on William Commanda and cognitive thinking. the way his mind operated. And his mind was as much massaged by his movements. And that is really how I think his ancestors were able to think so many big thoughts, so many bigger thoughts than we're able to contain in our modern languages of English. Grandfather Commanda said his language was so vast. Because it was so vast, it was an implication that it was a land based language and it was the land that taught him many things. And because it was so vast, it contained many concepts and ideas that other people cannot grasp because they do not have the words and the ideas for it. And we can see the challenges of that impacting not just the indigenous peoples but all of us, because we really realize in these times of huge tremendous global change we need to be much more creative about how we're addressing the challenges of our days. And if the voice of the indigenous peoples is loses that type of cognitive thinking that really I've actually seen only integrated so powerfully in William Commanda, then we've got many challenges on the way. We've had many, many wonderful, wonderful elders support our Circle of All Nations work and teach us so many marvelous things. And in my own work in Aboriginal justice, I've worked with Indigenous elders from across the country, powerful, powerful thinkers, spiritual people who've worked hard to share many things. And I've also had the huge fortune of meeting very many special elders like Martin Gashwasioma, Hopi elder, Grandfather Martin Martinez, the Navajo elder, and especially Credo Mutwa, South African Zulu shaman. And some of them break forward all sorts of new thinking into the kind of reality we are now facing. But I have to say that Grandfather Commanda is the only one who integrated at so many levels, from a political, from a linguistic, from a spiritual, from a connection with people in prisons, from a connection with people in governments, from connection with people in organizations. A very, very special person who scattered his seeds of knowledge amongst his multiple Circle of All Nations friends, but in a sense, in the creation of that tapestry, there are fragments of sparkle all over the place. But we need them to congeal into the kind of tapestry that he envisioned, the kind of tapestry that the grandmother spider recreates in her dreamcatcher web, where we in fact do come together with one heart, one mind, one love, and one determination to create that Circle of All Nations. Unfortunately, much of his work has been fragmented over the last decade, and we all need more humility to move back to the bigger promise of the work, the bigger unified promise of the work, because at our smaller levels, we're not necessarily following where Earth is evolving. So really, we're praying very much for an indigenous orientation. We're praying for peace, and this photograph in the center here is when he prayed at the landmines treaty event for the end of war. The next photo is at the hole at on Victoria Island, one of those Akikpautik hollow sound holes of the Ottawa River. And then last, grandfather, when he received his honorary degree at the University of Ottawa, and also when he delivered the convocation speech. We're praying also for the voice of the indigenous spirit and knowledge to influence and integrate in thinking of the day. The first photo is of the land at Eganville, where you can still see, and Carolyn Conrad and I saw the totem pole that grandfather and his friends erected over there in 1967, the anniversary of Canada's birthday, when he affirmed, together with Canada, a celebration of its own self, the Indigenous presence and the Indigenous welcome to newcomers to his land. We note the Sunbow 5 motif, but even more than that, the multiple journeys that William and other friends uh, undertook over the land. And I call him First Walker, really, because he initiated this amazing thing that, as I've said, I've also researched in terms of the cognitive. So we all really too need to find ways to keep our bodies in motion, even as COVID is uh, enforcing a period of reflection upon us all. And finally, the live turtle that came to our dock and presented at the time of the 2000 Millennium Peace Gathering, United Nations Decade for the Culture of Peace. And please pay attention to the words. They're as relevant as they were 20 years ago. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the renewal of the Circle of All Nations gatherings. I've talked about a few of our friends. In 1996, the first gathering happened, and it followed on the tail of the end of the Sunbow 5 walk. And in the 2007 gathering, when I first attended William Commanda's gatherings, many of the Sunbow 5 walkers were there again. Some of them had really no voice at that time, but gradually over the course of the gatherings, the voices grew powerful and the work grew larger, and people then moved off into their own directions. They acquired more education. They did work in with youth, promote justice, many other things. And most of us were enriched in deep ways by the experiences. It was a moment in time thing that cannot be replicated. Thanks then to the amazing elders, volunteers, security, participants, family, and community. Literally thousands of people animated the gatherings each year, and beyond healing, knowledge, sharing, safety, and incredible energy, the gatherings each year got more and more peaceful, such that we know that it is possible to attain peace. I've included in the PowerPoint presentation that I shall share later as a PDF a link to a couple of pages from our kindergarten dropout book that actually describes the gathering. I was going to read it out, but I won't today. And last night I posted photographs from our 2010 gathering, which I'd hoped to share with you today, but you can all go to it live and see what was happening on the last gathering, during the last gathering that Grandfather Commanda was with us. And you can add your comments to that page so you can enrich people's understanding of the work there. Then I was now going to, at this point in my agenda, move to a gathering video chat and invite folk who are on our page, on our chat line, to join me. But unfortunately, as you realize, it's not going to be happening today. But we can probably do something like that at some other point. So if folk would like to talk about the gathering, I can suggest we could try to do that on the 6th of August. But you will all then have to message me that you're interested in doing such sharing, and either we'll organize a Zoom meeting or we'll see if Facebook has fixed up its technology. Now we're supposed to move over to a Zoom meeting with our Carlton students, April, Himani, Saad, and Dilara. But unfortunately, you guys, I'm going to have to cancel that Zoom because we'll only be talking to ourselves since I can't broadcast you. But I shall hope to do this again sometime with you, or you can video or write messages about your experiences which I shall include with this post. April, as I said, has helped with our technology. Himani has been looking at our Sanapka website, and you actually met her because she participated and shared about the Sunbow 5 walk during our June 21st event. Saad is looking at the very original website, and Dilara, the Circle of All Nations second website. Dilara is also participating in one of our other projects, and we'll talk about her work a little later. Thank you guys so much, and I'm so sorry to disappoint you here. Then we were going to go to this video. I wonder if it'll play. Let me see. No, it won't. Uh, but that is where Kevin Chief used grandfather's words where he talked about Pope Alexander and the 500 years of the oppression of indigenous peoples. And in this little now musical overlay over the words of William Commanda, you see how well he knew the history of his people going back that 500-600 years. Um, Maybe I'll be able to share it with you later via my other page. Um, okay, and that ushers us into our discussion about the indigenous roots of civil activism. So earlier, we had some of grandfather's heroes, Pontiac, who, in fact, by resisting the overtaking of his land in the American Northeast, obliged the king in England to formulate the Royal Proclamation of 1763. His activism was of direct implications for that foremost document in the story of British North America, then the British, what was it called? Dominion. And of course, you'll recall from history, this was the time when American colonists were challenging their mother country. But Pontiac was seeking to protect North America, the land of the indigenous peoples. Later was Tecumseh. Her grandfather always was intrigued by the fact that Shawnee leader, Shawnee of Algonquin ancestry, was born under the light of a shooting star. And unfortunately, in the video, the movie version of Tecumseh, they imply that one of the settlers on his land was the person who told him about the upcoming eclipse. But in fact, it was the ancestors of Tecumseh and William Commanda, the Algonquins of the American Northeast, who actually knew about the movement of the Earth around the sun, about the planets and the stars, about the difference between the winter stars and the larger bodies of stars, such that they affirm their knowledge of equinox and solstice. And also, as I mentioned earlier, from Lac des Toiles in Quebec, a mirror lake on Lac Simon, the canoe maker lake in William's ancestors' territory. They were able to see the reflection of the star creating factory above, and in part the Perseids meteor showers is one part of that knowledge thread. Then in the 1920s, there was agitation at the United Nations level, and Algonquins supported Descaye, who took the petitions of indigenous peoples to Geneva. Later in 1945, round about the time that the United Nations was establishing itself, was the moment when Jules Siwi woke up the voice of indigenous peoples to their own indigenous rights and civil rights. And he really was the architect of the North American Indian Nations government. initially it was Chief Shabat from Kiriganzibi who joined him, the United Nations, by the mid 40s, 1946, grandfather Commanda, then a counselor at Kiriganzibi, River Desert, also joined in the activism, and so did many other indigenous chiefs. Later, William Commanda became the supreme chief of this organization, and he worked tirelessly, Visual Siwi, to animate an awareness of their rights and their oppression amongst indigenous peoples throughout the American Northeast. Through his countless weekly, actually, travels to New Brunswick. Each week, as he made his trip to work, he left his home on a Sunday um, to get to New Brunswick, to drive 19 hours really to work, because William Commanda was not just a chief, he was also a working man. He was also the chief of the North American Indian Nations government, and maintaining and undertaking all these responsibilities and duties all at the same time. And and then on his way back, he would overnight Visual Seaweed as they prepared and developed their plans for this organization. To understand William Commander's own thinking about indigenous activism, I suggest you look at a few pages in our thesis, and you'll understand the clarity and the sharpness of his thinking. But I wonder whether you know that Jules Seaweed was imprisoned for challenging the oppression of indigenous peoples in North America at the United Nations level. He was accused of treason. He went to court once, he went to court twice. There were other reasons that his activism was challenged, some of it to do with conscription. He went on a hunger strike, do you know, for over 77 days. And it was actually William Commanda and a lawyer via Six Nations who went to talk to a lawyer in Montreal who arranged for his release. And at that point, they discovered that the government of Canada had no papers even to hold him in prison for all those 78 days. 77 days, because the case had been dismissed, but they kept him in prison for months while he starved. And I'm sharing the story here now because it's so interesting that William Commanda died on the birthday of his friend Jules Seaweed. I talked to our friend Rejan, who I was also going to live stream with today, about the story of his uncle, but we shall do that too at some other stage. So this page is dedicated to the memory of Jules Seaweed and William Commanda, the friend, colleague, mentor. And William Commanda, of course, held the title of Supreme Chief of North American Indian Nations Government till his death. In 1945, we're noting the indigenous roots of the civil rights activism, which inspired later anti-oppression movements that are still, sadly, a part of our reality to this day. It was a precursor to the Native Indian Brotherhood, now the Assembly of First Nations, and also to the civil black rights movement, Martin Luther King, and of course the influence that had on places like South Africa, etc. So yet again, I don't want us to forget the indigenous voice. Now at this point, I was actually going to interview, like I said, Rejan Siwi and a few other people. And unfortunately, I can't do that. But I'll tell you, I was going to talk to Rejan. I was going to talk to Jamie Semoris Nichols, who is online over there right now, the mayor of Hudson, um, a former politician with a great knowledge of the history of the Algonquins of the Ottawa River watershed, and in particular the Hudson area. Just yesterday, I was talking to my friend about the late Jack Layton and how he moved so far to awaken Canada to really a three-part government and sharing and influence of each of the parties in the evolution of this country, and how much we actually miss his presence. But Jamie and his wife, also Amanda McDonald, have continued with the legacy of Jack Layton in some of their political work, but also in terms of their forest school and environment work. Um, Along the threads of the kind of work Grandfather Commanda would have liked to have seen evolving in greater force in his country. So we shall hope to talk to them at some other point. I also had uh, Ellen, who's doing a live video this evening about the nuclear bombing at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And she also met Grandfather Commanda, actually, I believe, right here in my home many years ago. Continues to keep his work in her prayer, but she's remembering at this point her Japanese ancestors who were part of that tragic 1945 heritage, 75 years since that awful time in history. But I'm also remembering our 2004 gathering when we had a delegation of 30 Japanese people under the Sony vice chair and now leader of the Holotropic Healing Organization in Japan, who came to participate in our gathering, brought forward many ideas about water and healing of water, because there too in Tokyo Harbor the water was so polluted. So they were passionate about cleaning up the water just as much as we were. And in addition to the loons joining us at that special gathering and event, in addition to the gigantic teepee that the Japanese brought with us, they actually participated in a sweat lodge ceremony, a healing sweat lodge, in terms of the nuclear bombing story. I think it was Roy Barnes who hosted that sweat lodge with them. Many thanks, Roy. And of course, that is part of our story and work, that ancient history, because the nuclear materials, uranium and stuff like that, was dug up in Hopi territory, and our elders, Martin Gashwasioma and others, were always very upset that earth from materials from their mother earth were utilized in such a devastating way. And the last person I was going to actually introduce was my friend Carolyn Anderson, who we met again in the context of environment issues, and in this case, the uranium challenge that people from Sharbet Lake and Ardok were engaged with. I think maybe Mirai will be online. I think maybe Larry might be online. Larry McDermott, folk like that were involved in this challenge of uranium mining. They asked William Commanda to take particular notice of it, and he did 4 pipe ceremonies as requested by the people, but also in the context of his care for the Ottawa River watershed, his river. Carolyn herself was heard about this uranium challenge, studied the potential dangers through many books, and if anybody knows her, they know how many hundreds of books she memorizes. Then late at night was posting her own activist messages with uranium, no uranium signs downtown Ottawa. Her daughter found her at 2 in the morning wondering what she was doing. This activist daughter found her at 2 in the morning wondering what she was doing. This activist mum was in fact raising awareness about this issue. But she arrived at a gathering at Victoria Island where Grandfather Commanda was sitting awaiting the uranium protesters from Route 509 who were canoeing down to join us at Victoria Island. That's when she met Grandfather Commanda and understood his passion for this issue. The former mayor, a former mayor of Ottawa, Marion Dewar, was chair of a citizens' inquiry on this. And her son made a petition. Her son, the late Paul Dewar, also a supporter of grandfather's work at Victoria Island and a supporter of his vision for Asanabka. In fact, Paul Dewar's final words as he died was that we needed to return to the vision of grandfather Commanda. So the pressing messages of people with respect to a new way of thinking remains with us. But Carolyn then uh, joined in that citizens inquiry, has many uh, notes and photographs of that experience. She would have shared some of that with us, but she shall at some other point. In the end, that activity was shut down and the land was in fact protected. Now I go to this painting by one of our new students. I just introduced her a little while ago, um, Dilara Erver, who is actually also participating in another educational activity that Circle of All Nations is now engaged in. We're studying our book, The Kindergarten Dropout. But we looked at chapter 4 a few weeks ago, and at this point we studied the history of the indigenous peoples as well as the broader history that William Commanda talked about in that particular chapter. And she found it very devastatingly impactful, that experience, in part perhaps because she'd experienced similar estrangement before, but she could then identify, she said, with the isolation, the alienation of indigenous peoples, amongst others. And she's done a beautiful write up of this painting that she created, and she called it in the end, We Are Not All Equal. And she gifted that painting to Circle of All Nations, and we see it as representative as much of the voice of indigenous peoples, as the voice of indigenous women, as the voice of black people who have been suffering over the last couple of months with the uh, um, uh, police brutality, the return of the memories of the pain of the years of slavery, the ramifications of that awful heritage, the pain of people still coming to terms with that. Probably the pain also, maybe, of the people who are engaged in perpetrating such horrors. But it's also a face of the pain of Mother Earth. And so, whenever in the future you see me post this JPEG, you know sometimes I'm at a loss for words for to talk about some of these issues that we need to be wrapping our heads around. And perhaps this image created by Dilara will help us empathize with the angst of the other. You know, I've learned in my academic word this marvelous word, other, othering, written about by Sayed, and a very powerful notion talking about how the concept of the other was created, was forcibly, formally created, really in a lot of romantic stories, you know, Rudyard Kipling, the face of the exotic, yeah, other folk, but sometimes created in the face of darker impressions of the other. And in this process, we've moved away from the guiding philosophy of people like William Commanda, Gina Way Daganuk. We're all connected, we're all interrelated. And the angst of the othering sooner or later will impact us all if it doesn't already. And so we continue to affirm a prayer for the moments of reflection that we hope this photograph will inspire people to, such that we move to zones of empathy and compassion and bridge building. Then we move over to, yes, what we're now calling our Asanabka Virtual Academy. And as I said before, we've sometimes thought about the Shaudia Victoria Island as the place for the new vision, and the place really where the Pandora's box was opened, and where many disreputable things were released, and where we still face the challenges of some of those questionable activities from over the last 200 years. But in the myth of Pandora, what is left when everything else escaped from the box was hope. And we say hope springs eternal. We tie it in with some of our academic research on the notion of entropy and syntropy. And negentropy is the process of stirring up the pot and creating hope and new options again, creating new life again. And that was what William Commanda's work was all about, bridging between the indigenous grassroots institutions and the academy is where our focus lies right now, and we are grateful to see that William's wisdom guides our dreams. I move on now to what would have been our next session, and this is our session about our learning from a kindergarten dropout book. So let me take you to this. We wrote this book. Can you see me? Let me see. We wrote this book in 2005 after a 2-week teaching session at the Kumik Healing Lodge in Kiriganzibi. Now I have to tell you, Evelyn explained the meaning of that word Kumik to me very clearly one day. She said it meant something like reflecting, going back and thinking about many things in order to understand the bigger picture. She talked about it in very rich language, but in fact, it's the kind of reflection that we are trying to do with our Circle of All Nations rereading of our book. What I see when I look at it 10 years later is really every single theme that we are engaged with trying to deal with today. We already wrote about, we already reflected on. There's absolutely nothing new. But each time we reflect, we find deeper answers. So I've been doing this online course with a core group of people, a couple of them adult academics who taught actually at Algonquin College. One of them, our PhD student, Andrew Costa. And let me say at this point, happy birthday, Andrew. Andrew, many of you will know, has joined us at many Circle of All Nations events over the last few years, and increasingly has moved in the direction of studying indigenous issues in his legal studies scholarship, and has presented many new insights to us. He also presents many neat songs. Rush apparently is his favorite, to inspire us to see the threads of connection between indigenous rights and indigenous justice issues in the legal system, between thoughts in the kindergarten dropout book and William Commanda's thinking, and where deep reflection can take us to not only then understand the issues better, but to animate actions and activities that strengthen us and allow us to present properly the ideas of Grandfather Commanda. It was a challenge, I think, for our students. Okay, so we also have some of our circle friends who've joined us with us. Luke and Sam, who's been part of our events and gatherings for many years. Benjamin, who's also been part of gatherings at Kirigan as well as here in Ottawa, Ramirez, Benjamin, and then also our new student, Dilara, who created that painting. Unfortunately, guys, even though we were going to be so smart today and also do two Zoom sessions in the middle of this Facebook Live, we aren't able to do it now, but I hope I've expressed well enough some key thoughts about you and your engagement here. I know your contributions, your photographs, your reflections as you've gradually come to do them more comfortably. Um, your paintings, your music, your thoughts have really deepened my own understanding of this book. Now you know Karen Bisson created all the visual images for me. People who came to our gatherings will likely have our book because we used to sell them. Fran used to sell them in her communications book booth during our gathering. And in the old days, I used to really imagine we'd make $1 million and then we'd be able to do our Circle of All Nations work independent of anybody. Unfortunately, you know, a few $100 here and there really actually didn't result in us creating any huge Circle of All Nations entity. So we, grandfather and I, and me now, continue to do all our Circle of All Nations work entirely unfunded, entirely without any project worker support. Um, but Karen now sells our books on her website, Turtle, Turtle Lodge Trading Post. And I know many of her friends and many elders go there for an easier access to some of the medicines of the land, some of the healing items she shares. Um, Separate from all of that, she helps me include and promote not just our Circle of All Nations book, also the documentary that Valerie created on our canoe experience, Good Enough for Two. Valerie paid for those documentaries herself and contributed them to help support Circle of All Nations. But now, thanks to Karen's encouragement, we have our Circle of All Nations t-shirts over there. I organized my thesis logo around the Circle of All Nations logo, my thesis actually around the logo, and so now we call it a uni tee, and it is not just a university t-shirt that we're claiming in the knowledge business, but it's also our message of for unity. um, yeah, so thank you very much to those students. We also have actually William's own niece, Lillian Darling, and and her husband Ray, part of our group. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to hang up on people because they ought not to be calling me while I'm doing live stuff. But yeah, so it's very challenging and enriching because some of the hard issues people understand from various different perspectives as adults, as young people, as indigenous, as non-indigenous, all of us on a journey of healing. And where does that healing take us to? It takes us to a little video clip by Jean Trudel, Cirque de Paix. He came to our gathering, began to understand what work William Commanda was doing, created his own group, Cirque de Paix, has taken peace work messages to the United Nations. He presented grandfather with a peace award in 2006, and we kind of like that very much because on the one hand, William was being acknowledged in Ottawa with the honorary doctorate degree, and then in Montreal, the ancestral grounds of his people, with the Peace Award. And uh, Jean Trudel and others of our friends, like the late Betsy Stang, Jim Davis, Wittenberg Center, Michael Johnson, who came to our gatherings, all took grandfather's peace message back to the United Nations. And you will note, after 2006, the United Nations reasserted visibility and leadership around the decade of the culture of peace. Whereas after 2001, they too, like many others, had gone silent. But of course, William Commanda never did. We never missed the beat of the prayer for peace from 2001, when we, in fact, were stranded in South Africa with 9/11. 9/11. That's when my sister Beulah drove us to find Credo Mutwa. Um, but we continued with the peace work, and then Jean interviewed grandfather, and I would like perhaps later to play this little clip where grandfather then reaffirms the message of peace. And that takes us then to what was going to be online interviews with you guys. You can post your comments. Please do, in fact, if you're out there on the video, or do it later if you watch this video later. Uh, and and then April will spruce it up so we get rid of the untidy parts of the video, and we shall post it on Facebook, because even though it's not been the full effort, it is our effort for today. So we say, yes, indeed, Grandfather Commanda is encore vivant, and our next activities will be the Circle of All Nations website and Atlas taking its place. Next, in September, hopefully we'll be online, and we'll be talking about acknowledging our friend Donald Marshall Jr. You'll see photographs of his mother in our 2010 gathering photos on the Circle page. Um, Elder Carolyn Marshall finally came to our gathering after her son had died in 2009, and she found release and healing after not just the year of his death and passing, but the years of pain and grief from the time at age 16 when he was incarcerated for a murder he had not committed. This is the key historical and activist voice of our times in Canada. And sometimes I'm kind of ashamed to realize there are many students, many young people, many Native people who don't know who this person is. He is the one who fought for Native rights and justice. And he's also the one who challenged, going back to the time of the Royal Proclamation, challenged for Indigenous rights and resources on their land. He was a strong partner of William Commanda's vision for the Chaudière Victoria Island, an Indigenous center in the center of the country. And we will be focusing on two cores of his work in September. One, the prioritization of childcare, youth at risk, and we'll hopefully be able to show you the Donald Marshall cultural camp story, a video that we did when I was working actually with the Aboriginal Justice Learning Network. And then later we'll talk about the criminal justice system. As you know, 30 years after the efforts of the Marshall Inquiry and others, we are in no better position with respect to restorative justice in the criminal justice system in Canada. It's a shameful story. 30 years after the Oka crisis, after the First Nations policing policy, after the Justice Inquiry, after the creation of the Healing Lodge for Indigenous women in prisons. And we hope the energy is now in better shape to really look towards promoting restorative practices. And with that, I would have gone then to the commemorative video created by Karen for our Millennium May event. And then I was going to say thank you, goodbye. And here goes to the details of our current work. But now let me just go to my live stream and see what you guys are saying. I don't see too many. Oh my goodness, Winnie from Denmark is up there. Lovely. Winnie in September uh, shared a very, very special moment with us by bringing forward stories and videotapes of the Jan Scamby from Denmark. In the old days, the director of the Roskilde Canoe Museum. And he wanted to have an indigenous canoe maker build a canoe in Denmark. And he couldn't find William, but he knew he wanted him. So he took a plane over, found his way to Maniwaki, went to William's house, sat on the porch, and waited. William and Mary Commanda were out in the bush. When they came in, and this is winter time, came in, they found this guy on their porch, all the way from Denmark. So they had a chat. A few hours later, they discovered the guy had no hotel or any place to live. So he ended up spending several days with them and then persuaded William to make the trip to Denmark to build the canoe for Queen Margaret. And Winnie brought back some of those memories to us last September. So in this September, we're going to share some of our restorative justice time by actually going to back to that story a whole year later. Okay, I see April has presented, and I am going to then um, leave you with a grandfather prayer, and see if that comes on. And it's the wampum prayer, so I think it's the fine note to.
En stund jag ingin kabishayan, Washington. Kinekushika baishayan, Nikanis kabawizi wak. Kinekijipisunik, Jiwabanday wayang. The Boonum, Kaya Manga Kukudishki, this moment of David. Victoria, Minetika Shanakadek. Yiminigo, Ezek, Yomiwan. As you mean, the Mago and a pizza, music of Pinnis, work I can cause watch. Condors and cause of issue Pinisi, North Kudaka, Migisi, he knew, as you call them. Shin Mamado say what, Pashabe should shin over, Kadamamado say what, get a bit modesty. Benjamin Odashno, Condor, I can call it, Niguan. No, I just saw it, Migisi.
I shall post the rest of that video so you'll be able to hear about grandfather's wampum teachings. I am now going to see if I can call Jamie in. Let me see. If I do, no, I have to stay on the page, so I can't do it like that. Let me see. Jamie, let me just call you. Oh gosh. Um, so Sorry, Jamie. I think you can hear me. I'm sorry. I have tried you, but obviously the call is not going through to you, unfortunately, and so I'm not able to talk to you right now. Feel free to write a few comments, and I shall interview you perhaps some other time and get you on. All our friends, I see Carolyn is waiting, but I don't think she's understanding. Oh, okay. Let me answer. Hello. Unfortunately, and
Hello?
I'm not able to talk to you
Okay.
right now. Feel free
Uh,
to write a few comments and I shall
okay.
interview you perhaps. Hello?
Hi, Jamie. I think the catch up is taking a little while. Let's see if we
Okay.
can hear you, because obviously you.
Okay.
I
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know if I dare try a video, but let us see. Can other people hear you?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
It might take a little while for it to process.
Yeah, it was very strange because I couldn't. I heard the ringing on your side, but there was nowhere on my side that was ringing. So I was
Uh,
perplexed.
Yeah, it's been very strange, and I really have a super with it tech friend who's been helping me through all of this, and it's been a challenge. She has actually contact with Facebook, and apparently something is down there.
Oh no.
But in any case, Jamie, I can hear you. Yes, Lara says they can hear you. So why don't we carry on with you talking rather than me even trying? Um,
Sure. The video.
And can I just say to anybody else who's out there and listening to me, even if you happen to be our friends who were on supposed to be on the Zoom call, I will message call you in so you can share like this. So please forgive all the changes in the plan, but you'll still have an opportunity to share if you message me like I see Lara there. Okay, go for it,
Yeah.
Jamie.
Well, I just want to start off miigwech to everyone who's here. This is a great annual annual gathering. As many of you know, grandfather Commanda with the first Circle of All Nations in Eganville, and then in 1969 at Bidabee Lake, I believe. When he started out these gatherings, part of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Romola, part of the idea was also this idea of coming together with the Haudenosaunee, who, of course, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee through the Beaver Wars were enemies. I guess they had a lot of conflict amongst them, and the idea of those early ones were to bring not only all nations on board, but also those two specific big nations of Turtle Island, which were the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. Of course, the Haudenosaunee were before Grandfather Commanda had the belts. The Haudenosaunee were the ones who were keeping the belts, keeping them safe. I believe from 1927 to 1970, when they gave them to Grandfather Commanda.
Uh,
So
uh, could I just interrupt you for a second
yes,
over
of course,
there?
of course,
That is not exactly quite the right story about the wampum bells. The wampum
right,
bells were originally held by grandfather's great great grandfather, Pakanawatik,
yes,
during the time of the Indian agents and the RCMP challenging and absconding with native ceremonial artifacts.
mm-hmm,
William's great great grandfather, Peter Nesco,
mm-hmm,
took the wampum bells for safekeeping to Rapid Lake.
right,
They were hidden actually there and in obscurity for many years.
mm-hmm,
When the Chief Clinton record was wanting to use the messages of the J Treaty Wampum Belt in the challenges of the border crossing issue.
mm-hmm,
Then the Algonquins allowed the belts to be used by him, And then on his death, there were multiple challenges because actually during that period, one of the belts actually went missing. But
Oh
at
no.
that point, he knew that the belts needed to be returned to the rightful keeper, and
Hmm.
that was the great grandson of William Commanda. And so I'm sorry to interrupt you and want to set that record clear because actually a few years ago there were many challenges even amongst the Algonquin people who don't understand the thread of the Algonquin wampum belts very
Yes.
well. And unfortunately, in this process, they did actually a lot of bad mouthing of William Commanda in their process of not understanding the
Oh
real
no.
story. So this is why, I'm always so conscious that every proper nuance of the William Commander story has to be understood
Yes.
via his lens. And
Yes.
if other people want to tell their versions of the story, I have to say I can't hold that with that much credibility
Yeah.
because I listened to him intensely for 14 years straight, pretty well 24 hours across the clock. And I know his insights about so many of these things. And one more thing, Jamie, I must say is, the word comes from the Algonquin heritage. The
Yes.
wampum heritage is actually the heritage of the people of the eastern seaboard. It is
Yes.
only when the British took over and the industrial age began to create the Hudson Bay wampum beads,
Yes.
the new beads using that, they became much more of a popular commodity. They became used in the discussions and things like that. But that later history takes away from the sacred history of the commander bells.
Yes.
Okay, so there we go. So please continue. Sorry
Well,
about that.
no, Romola, I want to thank you because this has really been a learning journey for me as well to learn these stories. And of course, the things that you say are very pertinent to my situation where I am now as the mayor of Hudson, because the Anishinaabe stories were pretty much erased from this town during the British settlement period, to the point that they're only starting to become uncovered now. With grandfather's great work that he did. Craig Commanda, one of his descendants and descendant of Tatanawatuk, came and showed one of his films in Hudson, and we're starting to open up. Amanda and I run a forest school, and last fall when we were running it, we were starting to teach the Algonquin words or the Anishinaabe words for different things that we saw in the forest, butterflies, memengua, and learning the language ourselves. So it's definitely been a learning process, and we're always happy that when we get the accounts wrong to be corrected with the actual accounts. Our journey began, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I wondered who were the original peoples who lived in Hudson and St. Lazare, these two towns in Quebec. And where I grew up was actually on the ancient shores of not Lake Champlain, Champlain Sea, which after glaciation, after the glaciers melted, there was what they call the Champlain Sea. And it always seemed to me that along those ancient beaches, there was a feeling of that people had been there before. Even as a young child, I could feel that those places had been inhabited. And then as an adult, as I searched more for that story, things started to unfold, and I started to discover um, the Anishinaabe Algonquin story of this landscape, and then learning the creation story. So it's been really a learning experience, um, to the point that when I was a member of Parliament in Ottawa, I didn't know any of these stories. It was really after I left in 2016 and really started putting my mind to it and putting energies to it that Amanda and I, my wife Amanda and I, started to discover. So one of the first discoveries that we had was that we saw the old map of, I think it was Bahornois, Governor Bahornois during the French regime, showing Kanesatake, which is commonly known as a Mohawk area, that we actually saw the Nipissing and the Algonquin were also there. And then through further research, it was finding out, oh, okay, well, the Algonquins had inhabited, this area in the Lake of Two Mountains for thousands of years, to the point that we found, we met someone who had found a 4,000-year-old arrowhead on the beaches of a place called Sandy Beach in Hudson. Another Mi'kmaq gentleman that we know had said that all the points on the lake, the points where the land juts out, these were trading places for the Anishinaabe traders. And the river itself, the Mississippi, of course, is also called the Ottawa River, which was the Anishinaabe-Moan word for trader. So this process of unfolding this knowledge has been ongoing. Amanda and I were looking at the Lenape, which were the original people of Manhattan, New York, and New Jersey. And as you said, Romola, the wampum comes from that area, from the eastern seaboard. And the Mamawinini traveled all over Turtle Island using its rivers. And I think as this knowledge becomes uncovered and starts spreading, that it's gonna make a shift in consciousness of people. I think I'm feeling that that's already happening. That people are realizing that the prophecy belt is quite accurate, and that we have to start making the choice. Are we going to live on Turtle Island, or are we going to continue dividing ourselves up into little pie pieces and fighting with each other? So Grandfather Commanda is definitely encore vivant. His voice is growing stronger, definitely here in Hudson, Quebec, and I would argue all over Turtle Island. And I think, a lot of the messages that he gave to you, and is still giving to you, I mean, these are still powerful messages. And the fact that we're doing this online shows that we don't need to be in one physical place, that, we are of one body and one mind. And if we gather together into one mind, then we can realize what the prophecy belts have talked about. In terms of our contribution, we've been trying to work with very young children to bring them out into the woods, and increasingly we're looking at the ethnobotany that was done by Speck with the Ojibwe, but many others. There's a database online now of Anishinaabe ethnobotany showing the medicines. There's increasingly in Facebook groups. There's the Midday Lodge has their own Facebook page now. There's videos on making the traditional medicines and the proper way to cultivate the traditional medicines. So, in a very dark time, there's all these little points of light that are starting to illuminate. And I'm very, very hopeful that this light is going to get stronger, and that the messages that Grandfather Commanda is giving us will increasingly be heard. I know that from my part, there's been ups and downs, certainly, in this political career, and a lot of resistance from the colonial system, of course. But if we keep on working together and we keep on keep the circle strong, it can only get stronger. And I'm very honored to be here with everyone that's listening. I'm very honored for all the wisdom that you've shared, Romola. I don't know if Amanda has anything to say, but we've been basically partners in crime here, and trying to tell the story of Turtle Island uh, as it's been obscured and over the ages, and really it's the legacy that we want to leave to our children is that this is Turtle Island. It needs to be respected, and that we need to follow not only the stories and teachings of the elders, but also the laws, because Daganuk was the law. It's why when the French settled here that they found out that they had to actually become part of the family, part of the Anishinaabe family, in order to go into Anishinaabe land. So the law was that we're all connected. But if you act like you're not connected, the law said that you wouldn't be allowed on the land. And I think we have to go back to that. I think the wampum speaks of that. I think that the original laws that were here, the Supreme Court even increasingly is finding that those original laws are applicable. And in international law, they're applicable. Certainly under the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, you can't just toss aside a set of laws and cultures. You have to work with what's there. And the legacy of the British colonial system and the French colonial system was that a lot of those things were tossed aside. And I think working together in concert as a circle, that we will be able to bring back that idea of Jinawai Daganuk, that we're all connected. And grandfather has given us such a gift, such a great gift to us that we need to continue to make encore that he is encore vivant. His voice is always with us, and that Amanda and I are intending on going forward with a new blog that'll be released soon, that will talk about how to help your children, educate your children about these traditional ways and other traditional ways, and to do what a story that grandfather once shared about Columbus, which is online actually. He told the story of that he heard when he was a child of when Columbus came to America, and how Columbus had actually slaughtered all these people with the Pope's approval. And I believe it was his uncle, had said, these things eventually will come back to the people who do them. And when that happens, the message was, take care of the children. And I think that's the story that Amanda and I have taken to heart in terms of taking care of the children and making sure that the children have a good and healthy life. And that we actually do have a choice to make, and we have to change our ways. So that's pretty much what I had to share with the circle. We have our household now has 5 children, so four that are 5 and under, and of course my 16-year-old. And so definitely, it's a very child-centered house, and we want what's best for them.
Yes, into the future.
Yeah.
Gee.
I don't know if you can hear them now, but
Yeah, I think they're getting a little restless, eh?
Yeah, they're restless. They've Penelope has been with her grandmother for 2 days, and so she's reacclimating to the house. And, but Romola, I have to again, and I really want to underline this, is that all the work that you did with grandfather, and all the research, your thesis, has really opened up so much in terms of our knowledge of Turtle Island. And I just, I know that you're fairly selfless about this, but I really do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you've done in keeping the circle going, in continuing grandfather's voice, and passing on these teachings. I mean, my children's children will benefit from these teachings that you have helped to disseminate to the world. And in terms of the Circle of All Nations, my hope is that year after year it will become stronger and stronger as Grandfather wanted it to be.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for sharing all of that, and for the last comments too. Sometimes it is like a lonely business, and you kind of wonder whether it actually presents more challenges for people, and yet, uh, yeah,
Well,
I
I
suppose.
certainly know that when I talk about the beach that the arrowhead was found on, I really wanted to explore all options. It was slated for development, and I wanted to explore all options for that piece of land. And yes, there basically when that was discovered, there was a lot of challenges that came up very strongly.
Yeah.
So I hear you about the loneliness part. I've tried several times at the council level to make even something as simple as the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples our framework for reconciliation. And I have counselors that have cold feet. So racism is still a reality. It's still a big challenge that sometimes seems like a insurmountable monster. And even there, things like ideas of privilege. It's like as a white male politician, I always have to do an internal check of is this coming from is what I'm saying coming from a place of privilege? Am I So in terms of those issues, there's also a challenge that feels lonely sometimes. So I definitely empathize with the loneliness factor, that it's a lonely business sometimes. But I think that what you're doing is that I'm sure it was, I'm sure at times it was lonely for Grandfather Commanda to be the carrier of the belts for 50 years or 40 years, I think was that you said, and to try to explain the importance of these belts. I mean, this is the thing that I don't think has gotten through enough is that these belts they're not museum pieces. They're not museum belts. They're living belts, and it's that story is a lonely story to carry that one. But I think that eventually that truth is going to ring out. I have to believe that.
Indeed. Yeah, okay, then. Well, then, thank you very much for sharing all of that. And maybe at some other point, we'll just do more lighthearted or simpler Facebook chats and record them. And then we'll be able to share them.
Yes.
And yeah, go into some of those issues, yeah, a little better. Okay, then,
Yeah.
Jamie. And thanks to Amanda. I know she's there in the background. And we'll chat with you guys again.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ramona.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Um, so you hang up. I'm gonna just try.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Carolyn. I'm so sorry.
It's
This
okay.
has been a challenging day for us
Uh-huh.
because we, yeah, haven't been able to get Facebook to work as we'd intended and as it did last time. But so I can't show you live. But can you just? I did introduce you and your engagement with the nuclear challenge earlier. So can
Mhm.
you just share whatever you'd like to in your voice?
Okay, I'll
But
talk
our
now then.
Circle of All Nations friends will remember you also from your presentations at our other events, including that very powerful presentation about condo development several years ago, and the powerful presentation on homeschool children and the plight of children across our country here. But today you're going to talk about your engagement with the nuclear issues. Carolyn is a walking dictionary about just about every story, and I'm really, really grateful to have learned so much from you and uh, to engage in and value your passion for knowledge. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Uranium is a touchy subject and one that I cannot talk about in a few minutes. Therefore, I will continue to write about it in the Circle of All Nations later, if that's all right.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I met former Chief and Elder William Commanda in 2005 on Victoria Island because of a uranium mining company taking native hunting grounds next to the highway called the 509. This uranium company destroyed the beaver dam and rerouted waterways nearby. Also, the native people that owned the unceded land had established hunting grounds on that land. Even so, they were allowed to be charged for trespassing on their own land by the Frontenac Mining Company and had to appear in court. The homeowners and the natives in and around the area were involved because their lands were nearby and would be exposed to tailings, radiation, radioactive waste, etc., caused by the mining company operations. Ordinary people live by near the Highway 509 and the surrounding areas. They had their lives in danger of uranium contamination that was all too close to the city of Ottawa and of the city of Perth. Many of them band together to fight this takeover. There was native people, but also there was white people living in nearby Maberly and Elphin and in other small towns in the area that fought this. They called themselves settlers, and they joined the native people in trying to combat this takeover. Charlotte Lake was not on the 509. It was on the opposite direction, in the opposite direction, just before you get to the 509 on the Highway 7. But the news media sensational accusations made about the natives of Charlotte Lake. It sounded like this mining company was in Charlotte Lake territory and that Charlotte Lake was at cahoots with them, like not cahoots, but in conflict with them. But it wasn't the Charlotte Lake conflict, it was the 509 conflict with settlers and people that were possibly from Charlotte Lake and other areas that were native that used this as their hunting grounds. So it wasn't really totally clear in the news media because it was always saying Charlotte Lake, but it wasn't even there. It was up further near Perth, like towards breaking off at Perth, Highway 509. Then further down Highway 7, a few miles further,
Okay.
the 509 branches. I'm almost finished. Quick.
Uh-huh.
509 branches off to Umpa, where my uncle lived, and this brought me into the picture.
Okay.
Many people suffered needlessly because of this wrongful takeover by a mining company in other areas of Ontario as well, in Quebec and Fort Collage, mining companies that should never have been there in the first place. That's the end.
Oh, thank you very much. I was telling people about how you became so actively involved in it that you were in the middle of the night, sharing messages about this.
Yes, I came across one of my flyers that I was handing out. It was a bright yellow with black writing saying no uranium to McGuinty, no to McGuinty. And I was posting them all up in the middle of the night down in the marketplace. When I ran into my daughter in the wee hour, early morning, going out to breakfast with a friend of hers, and she, what are you doing here? And I had my little satchel, and I was taking up paper, stamping them in all the poles.
So I guess William Commanda must have recruited you to the Circle of All Nations because he liked that kind of activist energy, changing the world. And so that's really, really great.
Yeah, I was brave enough to go out another day in the rain and went to Elmville Acres and was knocking on people's doors and putting it in mailboxes in the pouring rain, something like yesterday's rain.
Okay, well that's terrific. I must remember, Carolyn and I have actually done road trips along the Ottawa over the last year, uncovering more of its history, particularly in the Petit Nation area and stuff like that. So really, we're going to get our act together and share many of our stories in text, in words, and in videos. And for everybody else who's wondering who's this Carolyn, those of you who came to our gatherings at the Public Service Commission place, she's our potato salad lady.
Oh yeah, you can't forget that, eh?
No, we can't forget that. We miss that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you so much.
One of the other things that I would like to get an interest in is to try to collect some native artifacts around Ottawa. You know, like paintings on rocks and things. There
Okay,
are some things that people keep quiet, and it would be nice to delve into that and try to expose it a little bit.
okay, we'll make that our next engagement. So thank you
And
very
painting,
much.
and painting.
Okay, thanks so much for being so patient and waiting. And I'm sorry.
Have a good day.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.
Thanks, Romola. Bye.
Bye. Folk, I'm trying now to get Jim Davis, who's done work on videoing William over. Oh, there you are. Hi there.
Hey, Ramola, hang on.
Hi, Jim. So I'm so sorry. For one thing, we're late. For another thing, we can't do the video chat. But we had all sorts of problems for the first half hour. And so we're not been able to do our event as we'd
I
intended. But there
I
you are.
gathered that.
So, but
I
you,
could I couldn't even find FaceTime on my device anymore.
because we don't do FaceTime, Jim.
No, I mean on my iPad. My iPad doesn't have FaceTime anymore. I guess they quit doing it.
Okay, but in any case, we're on Facebook, and now we're on Messenger. But you were going to tell us something about your memories of dolphins and stuff, right?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. It was a real turning point for the Hopi. It was that year where a week after the Washington, D.C. prayer vigil, we had that 4-day-long conference in Virginia Beach called Belonging to Mother Earth. And grandfather and Peter and I went down to Virginia Beach right after Washington, D.C. and had 4 or 5 days off in between the two events to just hang out and relax and rest up a little bit. And the morning before the conference, we were out on the front balcony having coffee together first thing in the morning and saw 3 pods of dolphins. One coming down from the north, one coming straight out of the east, and one coming up from the south. And I ran back to my room, grabbed my video camera, set it on the railing of the balcony, and tuned in the approximate location where the 3 pods would intersect. And I said, Peter, here, just watch the camera. He said, what you doing? I said, I'm going to go throw my bathing suit on and run out there and jump in with them. So I went over to my room, threw my bathing suit on. We were 3 floors up, took the elevator down, ran across the beach, jumped in, and sure enough, the leader from the pod that was coming from the east shoulder bumped me and like pushed me right back towards the beach,
Wow.
towards the hotel. 2 or 3 times he pushed me. Like, get out the water, go on, get back where you belong.
Really?
So I real quick went back to my room, put regular clothes back on, and came back to join William and Peter. And William was on the phone. And Peter's kind of snickering to himself, and I'm like, yeah, what's so funny? Because it's the Hopi. And they had refused to send any representatives to that conference, claiming that they had said everything they were going to say to the outside world the year before at Cry of the Earth. They were done. They had fulfilled their mission and spoke at the House of Micah. And when William told them about the pods of dolphins all coming together right there in front of us, having their own little conference, that's when Martin called William on the telephone and said, "Well, yeah, we've changed our mind. We're booking the next flight out to Virginia Beach. We'll be there."
Oh, really, eh?
He changed his mind, and yeah, and they all came out with bells on. And I told that tale at his 90th birthday there at the Museum of Civilization in Hull.
Okay.
And I remember Evelyn thanking me profusely for it afterwards. She said, "You know, the people back home here on the res," she says, "they so rarely hear of some of the magical and mysterious things that happen around William when he's gone. They just make him wrong for being not present on the reservation, taking care of them. And they've got no idea what he does in the outside world and how he impacts other people out there." And I said, "Well, that's the fact that he made the Hopis, inadvertently made the Hopis change their mind by just telling them about these dolphins that appeared in front of us." So yeah, they trusted him. No doubt about that. They trusted his word being rock solid.
That's like, yeah, so truly amazing. His grandfather visited Martin in Hotavilla one time, and it was interesting. What I learned from that is at that point Martin was planting his corn, and it was it was very hot, and William offered to help him, and then he said, "No, I have to do this myself."
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was so fascinating. And really, many years later, I thought that was really actually a big message. In life, some things we have to do ourselves. And in that visit there, they developed such an intimacy. Eh? Yeah, they're pretty special. But oh wow, and gelled with the dolphins. So thank you very much for that special story. I had started with one of the prayers at the prayer vigil, but I stopped really because we haven't been able to get the good connections going. So I did play though the Williams doing his prayer in Algonquin, that part of the video. Later I'll show the section with the three wampum bells, or at least I'll post it so people can go and follow that. And some people have thought that Betsy is actually me, but we should acknowledge Betsy's birthday yesterday, and it's really Betsy in the photo with Peter and grandfather in the particular video I checked.
Yes, that's right. On that one, there's a couple of different versions on YouTube of grandfather speaking about the wampum belts and the prophecies.
Yeah.
And I saw one of them 2 or 3 months ago, and that's when I called you, because this Charlotte Commanda was claiming that she had some sort of authority to be showing them, and obviously she didn't. She was just
Yeah, well, it's kind
doing
of
it for herself, and she's never come back. I've never seen anything of hers again since then.
okay. Okay. Well, I've got the right one, so I'll post that later. And so, Jim, thank you very much for sharing that stuff with us.
You bet.
And then we'll catch up with you and maybe catch up with a few more stories more informally, so we don't have to do this time struggle.
Okay.
Take good care. Bye.
You too.
Bye. Okay, folk, I'm going to go now to Sandy. And I hope you know we can only do a call. Okay, so I shall have to see if I can get you on Messenger, Sandy Stewart, or else can you call me? Okay, I'm going to try Sandra Stewart. And yes, she's there. And so, oh my goodness. I'll just ask her to call me. Okay, so let me go back to some of this. I can't really see how many folk are online over there, though I see some of your names. I know Lara is Dilara, and I'm going to call her if I don't hear from Sandy Stewart in a minute. She's one of our students. I've sent messages to our other Zoom participants to say we can't do Zoom today, unfortunately. Um, and yeah, so we're scrambling with the best we could, but just remembering that thing, uh, about grandfather. He used to wind me up at the back of my body whenever he wanted me to talk, because I was actually very shy. And in any of the grandfather meetings and events, I generally preferred to sit 3 rows back and just support him when he needed his things done. I really didn't want to invade either his space or the space of the meeting. But increasingly, he wanted me to synthesize his points and share it with people. Because he found, I suppose, that I could do the right balance between sharing important things but not divulging more than people could understand or more than was necessary for people to understand. And when he was pleased with my delivery, apparently he'd smile and other people would laugh at me. So it's kind of ironic that today we've been obliged to pretty well listen to me. It's actually given me the opportunity to go through the PowerPoint presentation in a more personal way than I might have otherwise. And it's been great to be able to include a few people here and there. I'm really, really sorry about my students. Because they really are the affirmation of the ongoing relevance of William Commander's teachings. But when I'm thinking about teachings, I'm remembering this old poem, Alexander Pope, and it talked about a little knowledge being a dangerous thing. So deep, drink deep, before we um, uh, uh, aspire to share with great conviction about a lot of things. The grandfather William Commander story is very complex, but it has such an integrity uh, woven into it that one can tell when the weaving includes exactly the right color of blue or green or yellow or something that will turn the message around. Over the last year, and really probably over most of the years of his life and his efforts, messages have been nuanced that have misled people. But in particular, over the last many years, uh, many messages, many of the teachings of grandfathers have been misaligned with his ultimate purpose of building, really, that Jina Vedagunuk, we're all connected as much with each other, connected as much with Mother Earth, the cosmic, and all the other multi dimensions of life as indigenous peoples knew it. And that is a framework that operates on multiple levels. In our book, we try to talk about it a little bit in the frog principles, where you see the layering of history across time, but you can also see it in the layering of energies and the mingling of energies. And there are particular nuances when you shake, like, a kaleidoscope, that fall into place and you know they belong. And it's that is part of the way William Commanda wanted to understand things. A lot of people who think that they're supporting William Commanda or assuming uh, um, prioritize positions with his name are actually doing a lot of his work a great disservice. And this also includes many people who are part of our circle but don't necessarily understand all the intricacies. Now, I say in many respects that's been great because people have still kept the fan of William's work ignited. But obviously, in times like this, with the COVID crisis, with the racism crisis, with the huge challenges of mental and physical health, and with very few models of practices that can draw more people together, that can restore relationships, that can provide for conciliation. It's really, really important that we all, myself included, of course, approach this important topic with humility and with compassion and move towards creating a circle of all nations. Okay, so now I don't see that Sandy um, can hear me at all. I'm going to try Delara and we'll see if I can get her online. Uh, Maybe not. Okay. Um, so that is not working so well. You guys can hear me. Would, let me not do that there. Let me see. Would anybody else like to share via messenger chat? Okay, you have to let me know right away. I'm going to try Fran. No, it's not allowing me. Um, okay, folk, I'm going to hang on here for another couple of minutes and then I'm going to just close us off. Um, and send you off with my great apologies. Um, I'm online, but you don't see the request. Okay, hello, hello, hi Lara,
Hi,
how are you?
good, how are you?
Oh, well, I'm fine. A little bit frustrated that this has been such a challenging process, but I'm glad to have you hanging around there. And so I'm going to try and go back to my. Uh,
Using in the beginning.
okay, please go ahead and share your experiences with us. Lara is the person who did the painting.
Hi, yeah. I was in, like you mentioned, and working in two of your groups. One was the Carlton group, and the other was the book group, and both were amazing experiences for me, to be honest. With the research group, I had a really good time, and one thing I actually realized was like like it's reports. It's I see what Circle of Nations has done all over the world, but but in order to like help people, you need to realize that they need help. So it was a bit challenging to see that and accept that. It's kind of the reason I have a hard time watching the news. But what was better than watching the news was with reading these reports. There was always at the end there was care and solutions to those problems. It wasn't just informing people about how many people around the world needs help and how many people around the world actually cares about this, but there were results. So it actually, one main thing it gave me was hope for the future, I guess. It's the same thing with the book. We're only 5 chapters in, but I've had a great time, and it was really inspiring to me. I like painting a lot, but I don't like to paint out of fun. I like to paint when I need to, and yeah, it was a really good source of inspiration to me, and the painting also, the We Are Not All Equal painting was, I think, so far the most emotional painting I've done so far, and I have to thank you guys to give me that opportunity to get to that go down to that layer of myself, to go introspect in myself, and then pull out something in there into a canvas. It was a really challenging experience for me, but I'm glad that it's also inspiring to other people. Yeah, and I'm happy that I didn't know about William Commanda until I met you, until I applied for the job. And it was a bit of like a coincidence, but I feel really lucky. If it wasn't for you, probably I wouldn't have known, because I'm not from here. I'm from Turkey, Istanbul, and it's my third year in Canada. And yeah, I feel incredibly lucky, and yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of the both of your groups.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing all of that, and really, you've made really rich contributions.
It's breaking up.
Okay, so you made really great
Hello.
contributions. So I think it's breaking up. So we'll say goodbye now.
Goodbye. Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
me.
Bye. Okay. Okay, folks. So I'm gonna leave it at that since haven't reached Sandra, and we'll say we'll hope for better communications next time. But I suppose, considering all the challenges that our entire world is dealing with, and the um, challenges of technology right now, challenges that technology has to address, we really have to be patient with them as well, and hope that everything gets ironed on smoothly, because into the future, obviously, this is what we're going to be endlessly needing to rely on to be able to maintain some sense of community. Um, Again, miigwech for your interest. Best wishes on your journeys, and we'll continue our efforts, and join us when you can, or share thoughts and ideas, and best in your own journeys. Miigwech. Bye bye.